are places in this country that don't show up on Google Maps. Not because they're too small, but because the people who made those maps never came back. Harlan County, Kentucky. Population 247, or at least that's what the sign says. Nobody's actually counted in a while. My name is Cole, and in the summer of 2021, I made the worst decision of my life. I moved to Harlan. After my divorce, after losing my job in Nashville, after everything fell apart, my uncle called me. Said he had a cabin out in the Holler. Said the air was clean, the rent was nothing, and that I needed to get away from the city. He was right about one thing. I needed to get away. The drive-in took 3 hours on roads that Google Maps kept saying recalculating on. Like even the GPS didn't want me going there. When I finally pulled up to the cabin, it was beautiful. I'll give it that. Old wood, big porch, trees so tall they blocked out the sun at noon. And it was quiet. God. It was so quiet. I should have left the moment I noticed the quiet. Because in nature, real, deep nature, there's always sound. Birds, wind, insects, something. But around that cabin, nothing. Like the land itself was holding its breath. First week I met the neighbors. In a holler like that, neighbor means somebody who lives a half mile down a dirt road. Earl and Mabel Sutton, 70s, maybe older. Hard to tell with mountain folk. Earl shook my hand and said, "You the city boy staying in the Graves cabin?" I said, "Yeah." He nodded like that explained something he'd been wondering about. Mabel grabbed my arm before I could leave, gripped like a vice for an old woman. She said, "Don't go past the creek after dark. Don't answer if something knocks 3 times. And whatever you hear in the walls, don't talk back to it." I laughed. I genuinely laughed. I thought she was doing the whole spooky mountain lady thing. Local color, folklore. Earl didn't laugh. He just looked at me with the saddest eyes I ever seen and said, "Son, she ain't joking." First night was fine. Mostly. I woke up at 3 a.m. to what I thought was wind against the window. Fell back asleep. Second night, same thing, but this time it wasn't wind. It was breathing, slow, wet. Right outside the glass, I froze. You know that feeling where your brain goes completely offline? Fight or flight just crashes? I lay there for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. Then it stopped. Morning. I went outside and looked at the window. No footprints. No marks. The mud under the window was completely undisturbed. But there was something on the glass. A handprint. On the outside. Second floor. 5 fingers. But the proportions were wrong. Way too long. I'm a data analyst by trade. I like answers. So I started digging. Found out the cabin was originally built in 1887 by a man named Elias Graves. Big family, 7 kids. Settled deep in the Holler when the rest of Harlan was being developed. 1901. A census taker came to document the family. He wrote one entry and then stopped. The entry read, Graves family, 9 members, all present, all changed. No other details. The census taker resigned the next week. His notes from that visit were sealed. I found a local historian online, a woman named Dr. Patricia Holt, who'd been studying Harlan County folklore for 30 years. I emailed her about the Graves family. She responded in 4 minutes. At 2 a.m. Get out of that cabin. Do not spend another night there. I'm not joking. Email me when you're safe and I'll explain everything. I should have emailed her from a gas station in Nashville. Instead, I replied, I'll be fine. What happened to the Graves family? She responded, they're still there. I went to see Earl the next morning. He was on his porch, didn't look surprised to see me like he'd been waiting. I asked him straight up, what is in that cabin, Earl? He was quiet for a long time. Then he poured me a coffee and sat down and told me everything. The Graves family, all 9 of them, disappeared in the winter of 1901. Official story was they moved west. But Earl's grandfather had been a boy in Harlan then, and he said nobody moved west. Nobody left. The family just stopped being seen. But the sounds from the Holler didn't stop. For decades, people heard things near that land. Voices, crying, laughing, the wrong kind of laughing. The kind that goes on too long. The kind that sounds like someone who learned what laughing was from a description, but never actually heard it. Earl said his grandfather had one rule. That hollow is theirs now. You don't go in, they don't come out. An agreement. Not written anywhere, not spoken out loud. Just understood. Then why is there a cabin there for rent, I asked. Earl looked at his coffee. Ain't been rented in 11 years, he said. Not since the last fella. What happened to him? Earl didn't answer. He just looked at the tree line. And I noticed his hands were shaking. That night I was packing my bags. I had my truck keys in my hand. I was ready to go. 3 knocks on the front door. I stopped. Mabel's words came back to me. Don't answer if something knocks 3 times. I didn't move. Silence. Then a voice. Outside the door. A child's voice. Mister? Mister, I'm lost. It's cold out here. Can you please open the door? Everything in me wanted to open it, because it sounded so real, so scared. A little kid lost in the dark in the mountains. But then I noticed something. The voice didn't have an echo. I was in a holler. Sound bounces everywhere out there. Off the hills, off the trees. Everything has a natural reverb to it. This voice was flat, like it was being played through a speaker, pressed right against the door. Close. Too close. Like whatever was making that sound had its mouth pressed against the wood. "Mister, I can see you standing there. Why won't you let me in? Don't you want to help me?" I grabbed my bag. Back door. Truck. Gone. I didn't look back. I almost didn't look back. At the end of the driveway, I don't know why I did it. I looked in my rearview mirror. There were figures on the porch. Not one. Not two. 9. Standing completely still. Just watching me leave. I drove 4 hours straight and stopped at a diner outside of Lexington. I called Dr. Holt. She picked up on the first ring. She'd been studying Appalachian folk horror for 30 years. She'd documented 17 locations across Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia, where similar phenomena had been reported. She called them echo places, locations where something, she didn't know what, she'd never been willing to say exactly what, had mimicked and replaced an original population, not killed them, not driven them away, replaced them. Something that learned to look like people, sound like people, but couldn't quite get it right. The proportions slightly off, the reactions slightly delayed, the emotions performed rather than felt. "They can't leave the land," she said. "Whatever they are, they're tied to it. That's why the agreement worked for so long. You stay out, they stay in." "What broke the agreement?" I asked. She paused. "Someone built a cabin and started renting it out to strangers." Six months later, I found the previous renter's Facebook profile. Guy named Marcus Webb, 34 years old, moved to Harlan in 2010 for a change of pace. His last post was October 2010, just a photo. The view from the cabin porch. Beautiful fall colors. Mountains. The comments were full of friends saying they'd lost touch with him, asking if anyone had heard from him, worried. One comment from a woman who said she was his sister. The police said he moved away voluntarily, but his car was still there. His phone was still there. His dog was still there. Marcus would never leave his dog. I looked at the photo again, zoomed in. In the tree line, barely visible in the shadows between the trees. 9 figures, standing completely still. And one of them, just one, was waving at the camera. I don't live in Kentucky anymore. I don't drive through rural areas at night, and I never ever open the door when something knocks 3 times. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night, that actually haunts me more than anything else. Dr. Holt said they can't leave the land. But last month, I got a friend request on Facebook from a profile with no photo, no posts, no friends. Account created last week. The name on the account was Elias Graves, and the only thing in the About section, my home address.
Check your friend requests. Some of them aren't from people,